What's going on, hockey fans? This is episode 74 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke, and as always, joined by my co-host Sean. Sean, what's going on today?
We are enjoying the end of the first weekend of NHL action. It's been great to have hockey on, all these action and stuff going on. So it's just nice to get back in the groove.
Yeah, it's been a good first week, I guess, almost a week, and it's been a lot of kind of a mix. There's been a few shutouts, and there's been a lot of high-scoring games. So I think we're kind of seeing that thing that's very usual in the season, where the goalies come back and they're, a little loose, and defense is not so great, and the lack of any exhibition preseason games, and just the real short camps, I think has really lent itself to a lot of scoring. As we've seen a lot of like 5-4, 5-0 type games so far.
8-0.
Yeah.
For the most part, I mean, usually the early season is kind of like the offenses there a bit earlier than the team systems, the defense, the goalies. But I do kind of want to mention that, like, looking at how the games are playing out and the quality of the play, even with no preseason and the short camps, that, like, it's kind of showing that maybe we don't need that lengthy of a preseason process, that like the 7 or 8 game preseasons can be cut down to 2 or 3 games, and it's not really going to make an impact really. Maybe in just terms of showing off like rookie players or trying to like set the roster in that regard, it might still be useful, but to get the players ready, it looks like they're mostly okay and good to go with the short camp and a couple of games maybe just to find their legs.
Yeah, there was a comment, but I think it was like, might have been like Brendan Gallagher. Can't remember exactly who it was, but they were saying, they kind of like the short camp. Everybody kind of comes ready to play, and they don't feel like they need so much extra time. And I think that was interesting because from the player's perspective, yeah, they want to get into playing meaningful games, and they want, points to count and to just get on with the thing. But from management or from coaching perspective, they obviously want a longer training camp. They want that preseason. They want to be able to test out their roster and to get things like chemistry and line combinations all set up. So it's kind of funny to see, a player come out and say, hey, I like this. We should do this all the time.
I would fully support that if they cut it back to a couple of games, because like that entire month of September into October of training camp and preseason just kind of gets a bit tiring at the end of it, just watching as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, from like a player's perspective, it totally makes sense. But I think for teams that are competitive, that makes sense. But maybe there's some teams where guys come and they're not ready for camp. Like, they're totally out of shape. I mean, we see that all the time. I mean, like the rumor last year was like Johnny Gaudreau came and he was like super out of shape. I don't know if that was true or not, but you have those kind of rumors come out all the time that, oh, this guy came to camp and he was like, 20 pounds overweight, or had not been training properly. And I'm not saying this about Jake Virtanen, but I know he really hit the weights hard this offseason because the Canucks told him, like, we want you to be bigger, basically. And, he's come to camp before and they've said, oh, well, you didn't train like we wanted you to. And so, having that extra time can allow the player to, work on that a bit longer and maybe, get back in with the team's trainers and strength coaches and all that sort of stuff. So there is that side of it too. And then, maybe that can prevent injury, but the other side is you're playing more games, you're on the ice more, so you have an increase in potential injuries. So it's going to be interesting to see next season if they do away with such a long, extensive training camp. Or
they
not.
might have to for one more season just to get things back on track, because I believe this year they're going to be playing the Cup final like early to mid-July, and they still want to start like in October, early November. So they're going to probably cut back again and have a short camp to get the season started, on time, so that they can still play their 82-game one next year and get things back going, how it was before everything happened.
Also, the extended training camp, I think, is a good opportunity for those players that aren't going to make opening day roster. The guys who are at the AHL level, or maybe they just got drafted, they get an opportunity to meet all of the top end players, and to be able to try and play with the team. And in those preseason games, they kind of get a little bit of NHL action, so that when the season rolls around and they get called up, they've at least have some of those preseason games, and the coach gets to see, kind of where everyone's at and what their skill level and what their work ethic's like and how they might fit into the system and everything.
Yeah.
So, with the AHL kind of being getting the short end of the stick this season, where, some teams are opting out and teams are having to combine to even have a season. I think they might be hesitant to pull away from that permanently, just because there is that kind of development side of things.
That's a good point too, because a couple of years ago the Oilers drafted Ryan McLeod, and that fall when he was in his first training camp, he almost made the team. He was a second-round draft pick that year, and he almost made the team out of camp because of how impressive he was through that process. Like, he was one of the final cuts, and he's kind of been on the cusp of getting called up for a little bit here, and he's even had his name thrown around this year. So, that was a good opportunity for him to kind of show where he was at in his development and get a chance to almost make the Oilers right out of training camp, his first year as a pro.
Yeah, it's always kind of a good opportunity for guys to, battle and show that they're, perhaps have elevated their game or stepped it up. And, even if you've seen guys that have been drafted in the 7th, 6th or whatever rounds that have an awesome training camp and then make the team. I mean, recently, one comes to mind is Jesper Bratt for New Jersey, I don't know, sixth round pick, I think he is. And so he just had an amazing camp and made that team. And so it's, if you have such a short camp, you might not get a good look at guys like that. And you might be like, oh, well, how good could you really be or whatever. So I just think from the longer term perspective, they'll probably want to revert back to those longer training camps. I know as a fan, it kind of sucks because you have to wait so long to actually get to meaningful games, but I know some people are really into that, that roster pipeline or the prospect pipeline and seeing how everyone stacks up and all that. And I know that's kind of the part of my knowledge that's the weakest is the prospect gang. So I'm not super into that. So I would be into the shorter camps and all of that as a fan. Anything else that's kind of jumped out at you so far with these early games? Any of these early matchups that have really piqued your interest at all, Sean?
We kind of trashed New Jersey in our preview episode for that division, just saying what chance do they have? They're pretty much just done from the start. But they opened the season with 2 games against the Boston Bruins, and they actually held their own. I believe they go 1-1.
Yeah.
1-0 in time and won the other game against the Boston Bruins, and
forced him to OT.
Yeah, so it's 2 games, small sample size, but for them to kind of be able to start the season and be able to do that against one of the league's best teams is damn impressive. And additionally, within that, in those 2 games, the Devils did not give up an even strength goal. They only got scored on shorthanded and on the power play.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that shorthanded one. It was on at the gym when I was there, and it was Marchand just making a really good play, battling through. I think it was a forward playing defense, and just battled through, kind of blowed by him on the line, and passed it over to Bergeron. And how deadly are those guys shorthanded, right? It's just insane. So it's understandable.
Imagine being able to ice that, icing your 2 best players, your 2 best offensive players shorthanded, as they're also your best penalty killers. That's such a great opportunity.
It's interesting that you say that, because Toronto tried that in their opener against Montreal, and they put Matthews out on the penalty kill, and he was on the same side of the ice as Shea Weber, and Shea Weber got a slap shot off, and Matthews really didn't look like he was trying very hard to get in the way.
I don't blame him.
And Yeah, me neither. And I know the Sportsnet panel was talking about, do you really want your premier player out there? Because if he takes that off the leg and, gets like a broken leg or something, that's like a huge loss to the team. But on the other side, he could have got in Weber's grill and poked it by him and then could have had a breakaway or something. And yeah, it kind of made me think that, Boston has their number one line out there on the PK, and they're super valuable for that. But funny that the Leafs are trying to do that too. But from Montreal's perspective, it's funny because, Weber will know that Matthews isn't really going to try to block it. So he's got basically a free shot lane, right?
So basically Matthews' responsibility in that is to get out of the way so the goalie can actually see the puck and then, position himself right to make the save. So the last thing he wants to do is go and be, half in the shooting lane and, blocking whoever's in net's vision, screening his own goalie and letting a Shea Weber slap shot through.
Yeah, not ideal.
So you mentioned the Leafs were trying their, premier players out on the penalty kill. Edmonton tried that too over the last couple of seasons, having Draisaitl and McDavid killing penalties. Doesn't always work the greatest. It's great if you want a quick shorthanded breakaway the other way, but doesn't always work the greatest. And they still try to put McDavid and or Draisaitl out on the ice at the end of the penalty. They try and capitalize on the quick break the other way when the guy jumps out of the box. So they'll still usually have one of them out at the end of the penalty kill.
Yeah, I've noticed that watching Oilers games too, actually, that they'll always throw them out there if there's a draw at the end of the penalty, just to try and, quickly break out and sprint down the ice. I don't know how effective it is, but I think, using those guys at the end of the penalty kill are smart. And I think it was Kevin Bieksa on the panel was even saying that exact thing, if you don't want to use your star players on the penalty kill, but you also want to get them in the game, how about you put them out at the end?
Exactly.
And so, they're not really killing the penalty, but they're out there and they're on the ice, and so they're getting some touches and, they're getting the feel of the game. Because if they're just sitting there, if you could take penalty after penalty after penalty, it can be rough to not have them, with their ice time going up. But I know as a Capitals fan, I wouldn't want to see Ovi out there for a penalty kill too many times, unless it was
he might be really good at covering
at the very end of the game and there was an empty net. Yeah,
it's hey, this is my wheelhouse. I know exactly what to do.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I think there's got to be a few other teams in the league that put their stars out there for a PK. But I mean, it probably depends on, how defensively responsible those star players are. Because you think of St. Louis, Ryan O'Reilly is definitely out there for a PK, but I think he's not quite the same type of player as, McDavid or Matthews. So it makes a bit more sense for him to be out there. And, Marchand and Bergeron, specifically Bergeron, makes a lot of sense for him to be out there. One thing that I wanted to mention is that I think the NHL has done a really good job so far. The schedule is, really compact, but I think that the baseball style mini series, for lack of a better term, is actually working out really well. And I'm always finding myself, if there's a particularly close game or a call that was kind of divisive in one of the games, or a cheap shot or something, I'm really looking forward to the second game and be like, oh, what's going to happen next? Because that was a close game and could have went either way. And then the second game I find that the second games have always been very exciting. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sean?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. We've heard a couple of players talk about this, how it's going to be a bit, in air quotes here, easier for them because they have a bit less travel, especially in the North Division that you're going cross country. So I think from the player's perspective, it works well because you can get more games in with less plane trips. You're going to a city, you're going to be there for 2 or 3 days, playing a couple of games, and then going somewhere else for a couple more days, and then going some days and games. So it's nice. And no, I fully agree with you on the fan as well. As a fan, getting to watch like a couple of games, because it's like that's when you build the intensity, the emotion, the momentum between the two teams, is when you play them a couple of times, back to back in close sequence to each other. We always looked forward to like the weekend home and homes with the battle. Those are the most intense weekends of that, that rivalry, because you play them two times really close to each other, and it's like the storyline of the weekend. So now you get that every single series with another team, you get that same little like rivalry matchup. And we saw it today, Detroit and Columbus earlier today. They had their game, and right at the end, I think it was like the last minute of the game, there was a play where Bobby Ryan got Korpisalo, and it started a brawl. Werenski and Larkin fought, and Bjorkstrand and someone else fought, and the Red Wings as well. And they're going to play again probably tomorrow or the next day. They're ending on that high note of that line brawl, so it's going to be exciting to kind of see how that transitions into Game 2 here.
Yeah, it was super exciting. Who thought that those teams had it out for each other? And then there was Buffalo versus Washington. In Game 1, Nick Dowd laid a questionable hit on Stahl, and then Game 2, I was looking forward to be like, okay, well, is he going to have to answer for this? I don't think anything really ended up happening, but you could see that, Dowd was getting targeted by guys like Rasmus Ristolainen all game. And so it's that kind of mini excitement for like a playoff series. And it's very fun to watch as a fan. And, you don't have to force rivalries. Like, you don't have to always have Wednesday night rivalry, right? It can be just, Detroit and Columbus, and it's hockey, and it makes itself apparent. Like that game was pretty quiet and pretty tame, and then just push the goalie basically at the very end of the game trying to get a goal, and all hell broke loose, and it's fun to watch. And Larkin and Werenski used to be roommates, and they ended up fighting, and I think Larkin left some tickets for Werenski's parents to pick up at the game, and they got you could see them almost laughing when they were fighting, and it's just exciting. I really like this schedule, and the NHL has had, I think, 27. It might be a little bit more, but from the last news article I read, it's 27 positive cases, and 17 of those were on the Dallas Stars, and that seems like a lot, especially for the Stars to have that many players testing positive. But cumulatively during camp, I mean, how many players are there?
It was like 30-something, 35 per team or something. Not to mention coaches, trainers.
Yeah, there's all sorts of staff around, and all the guys in the taxi squad, and all the guys who got waived and all that. So there's a lot of people involved, and that's not that high of a number. And I think the NHL seems like they have a lot of good protocols in place, and like JT Miller and Jordy Ben. Jordy Ben, I think, tested positive, and JT Miller had close contact with him, and so he was on the COVID protocol list and missed the first few games. And so I think they're just doing a good job at it, and I think they should be given some kudos for that, because Barry Bettman came out and said that they're operating at a loss, and they're not losing millions, they're losing billions, and it's not about the money, it's about the game. And I really commend them on doing a really good job, and they are providing really entertainment for people, and I just really like what they're doing.
I think a big-ish factor into why they still had to continue playing is to do with all the contracts they have and the obligations they have, especially from their perspective, the TV contract. That's they're up for renewal right away, and this is going to be like one of the most pivotal moments in the history of the league to see how much they can get on which networks, and like how much exposure they can get out of it. And for them to cancel an entire season right in the lead up to that would probably cost them more in the long run than the operating losses of this season. So I think kind of making it look like a do good thing for the fans, but there's probably more obligations and long-term losses to consider when they're factoring that in. However, you are totally right in saying that they're doing it for the game, not the money, which is kind of putting the game, putting the sport, putting the fans, the players, like all of their well-being, and putting that all ahead of the bottom line, which is kind of still a nice thing that we're getting. We're getting hockey, we're getting a season, we're getting something to kind of help keep us distracted and give us something to look forward to in a very difficult global situation, right?
Yeah, and there's definitely the contracts and ads and all that sort of stuff that makes up a lot of the revenue for the league and the owners, but the ticket sales are massive for them, and they're so reduced right now that there's teams that barely break even from the sounds of things, like Florida at the best of times, and right now the fan capacity is at 0 or significantly reduced, and so they are losing money undoubtedly, but you're totally right that the TV contract is something that's going to it could be huge to change the amount of money that's involved in hockey compared to the other of the big sports in North America. But they could have canceled it all and just said we're going to save money,
exactly,
and then come back next season. And so it's obviously a bit of both. I'm happy as a fan. I don't live in a city where there is a team, and so I'm not too bummed out I can't go watch one in person. But it's nice to have it back and kind of have a little bit of a sense of normalcy, even though we're still obviously dealing with COVID throughout all this. It's been really good for my mental health because it gives me something to kind of think about rather than work.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
it's always nice to have hockey back.
It's something to look forward to at the end of the day. It's something to look forward to on a day off when like today there's games all day, so we're gonna finish up recording here and I'll be able to switch on a game immediately and then be able to watch the rest of the night. It's we can focus on side stuff like fantasy hockey and kind of get a little bit into that, and it's just nice to have the distraction, the positive interactions with people and stuff like that to keep things, like you said, the normalcy, the distractions, all that type of stuff.
So the Flyers came in. They're the team that I'm kind of picking to go all the way this season. I think they're really built strong, and so in game 1, they came out against their rival, Pittsburgh Penguins, and it was actually a really, really good game for Philly. It's a really cool storyline to have both Oscar Lindblom and Nolan Patrick return, and the icing on the cake was that they both scored.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
And so very cool moment. Yeah, to have both those guys come back into the lineup. Lindblom returned to the bubble in playoffs, but making his regular season return, and Patrick sat out all of last season, and to just come back and to get those.
Yeah, it's such a big emotional boost for the team to get both of them back at the same time into the lineup like that, to get both of them scoring and productive offensively immediately. It's like a really good like momentum boost for the team in a first game, and they end up doing great. They beat Pittsburgh 6-3 in the first game, 5-2 in the second game. That's a really good showing for the start of the season, and they're really exemplifying why they have such strong depth, especially on forward. They lost Sean Couturier very early on in that second game, but they seem to be able to fill the hole that was left by him, and he's going to be out for a couple weeks, but they still have a lot of really good forwards, so I don't see them struggling too much in his absence.
Yeah, Travis Konechny got a hat trick in that second game, in that second game, I think. Also got an assist in that game as well. And so, they're really strong up front. Carter Hart is the man. And they still got Brian Elliott available for backup duties, and it's been really awesome to have Gritty at the games. How awesome is it to have Gritty back in your life?
We missed him. Like
throwing his giant hat on the ice. Yeah, it me.
That should just be them.
Yeah, I mean, in this season, he won't be able to punch any children. He won't be able to punch any kids in the stands.
Oh no! What a loss.
And so, Kevin Hayes will be happy that he won't be detained this season at all. Yeah, unless he goes on a road trip, I guess, with the team, and there's a
He's going to have to take to punching the rookies in the back.
yeah, the closest thing to kids that are around. And it's been kind of screwing my fantasy team because I drafted so many stars because I'm just a fan of them, I guess. Their games are all postponed because of that COVID thing that I referenced earlier. Looks like they're reset to start on Friday, the 22nd, I think. Yeah. So I guess they're going to have to squeeze those original games into the calendar somehow. I'm not sure if they're going to tack them on to the end or if there was any spare time that they had or matched up with the other teams that they had to play. But looks like they're back in action, and I'm eager to see what they look like. Apparently, Jamie Benn has been playing with Guryanov and Hintz, and they've been just dominating the inter-squad games. And
that
so
line would be...
We'll see what they look like when they get back.
That line is going to be an absolute wrecking force. To have Ben and Hintz, they're both kind of, Ben's super physical. Hintz is like a spark pluggy, physical, offensive-y type guy. Guryanov's going to go score. That could be a really good line. Yeah,
I'm happy as a fantasy owner of all three of those guys on various different teams. I really want them to get started, and I'm sure they want it. They're chomping at the bit to get going, and it also kind of helps them out a little bit. Silver lining, so to speak, where if they have games added onto the end of their schedule, that Ben Bishop will be back for those games. And so he's out right now with an injury, but he's set to be back, I think, end of March. And so if they're adding games on, he'll be around, and so that's good news for them. Although it does suck to miss the start of the season and to be, kind of a week and a half behind everybody else. Also, they'll be at the bottom of the standings forever.
I was about to just make a joke about the Stars being the worst team in the league, but they also still are competing with Chicago, Columbus, and Buffalo, who also have 0 points.
Yeah,
the difference teams, so they're technically above them in the standings, so they have less losses.
Wow. Oh, man. Well, it could be a sneaky, meteoric rise to the top at the very end of the season because of the
they're going to have the St. Louis Cinderella story.
So is Valentine's Day going to be the new American Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's about the right time frame, I think. Or
is it going to be a little bit
about
later?
A month. No, Valentine's Day is right on track, actually. But just over a month, just under a month. And with a shortened season, that'll be about the right time frame for being able to tell who's going to be in the playoff. That's pretty good. That's going to be the time. Yeah,
that's our new target date, and we'll check in then.
So looking over to the Columbus Blue Jackets,
all right.
Recent, rumors started flowing around the end of the offseason that Pierre-Luc Dubois was requesting a trade out of Columbus, and it kind of got shoveled to the side as he immediately signed a contract extension. Everyone thought everything was okay. However, since that happened, it's now been publicized by, none other than John Tortorella that Dubois does want out of Columbus, that he has officially requested a trade. And it's kind of interesting, maybe not surprising, considering what's happened in Columbus with star players over recent years, that yet another one wants out of Columbus. So kind of sucks for them because it seems like he's right on the verge of, kind of turning the corner into being like a legitimate number one center. But looking at today's usage anyways, in a game against the Detroit Red Wings, Pierre-Luc Dubois only got 15 minutes of ice time. He was like the 6th or 7th most of a forward. There were, 2 lines of forwards that got more ice time than him. Tortorella said, no, he did not bench Pierre-Luc Dubois, but the ice time and usage would kind of suggest that there was a stretch where he was benched. I was wondering what your thoughts on that situation were.
My initial take on that is maybe they're just reducing his ice time so he doesn't get hurt.
That's a common one.
So that they can trade him. But yeah, he's had a slow start to the season too. So, He just got his first goal tonight, and I think that's his first point for the year. I think before that he was just like -2. That's it. I know this because he's on my fantasy team. You compare him to someone like Patrick Laine, who also is rumored to have requested a trade, or his agent has said that. Anyway, it would be mutually beneficial if Laine moved on from the Jets. And Laine's really been tearing it up in his time, and he's hurt now. And so, maybe Columbus saw that and said, you know what? Maybe we want to keep him healthy, so that we can trade him out of town. The rumor is that Montreal is kind of in on him, and oh my God, if they get Pierre-Luc Dubois, Montreal is going to be perhaps bumping Toronto off of my list for number 1 in the North. If that trade, depending on who goes back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because the rumors, I would not do that trade if I were Montreal, because they're wanting like Suzuki and Mete. I would not give up Suzuki right now.
I think Suzuki is like probably the only untouchable person on that team, and Price. Yeah, I mean, maybe Josh Anderson. I think he could look really good on Columbus.
Yeah, that could be a good fit. He might be a Tortorella type player.
Yeah. But yeah, I saw that Suzuki news. I don't think that Montreal would ever bite on that, but Kotkaniemi,
I think they could on that.
maybe.
I wouldn't be as opposed to
Kotkaniemi plus, I think like Kotkaniemi with like Texier and Bemstrom or something. That'd be pretty sick. So yeah, I don't know. It depends on what they'd have to give up, but I think Montreal with Pierre-Luc Dubois in their top 6 would be pretty good.
Yeah, because
I mean, who's their first 2 centers right now? Dano and Suzuki?
Yeah. I mean, is Suzuki playing center? I know he is one, but is he wing or center?
I'm not sure. But yeah, there's no way that they trade Suzuki. And then with Juleson getting claimed, I don't know if they want to get rid of the defenseman prospect too. Like, I don't think they really want to get rid of someone like Mete.
Yeah, they probably don't. But at the same time, looking at their defense,
I don't know.
Someone like Mete is probably expendable, especially because of Alexander Romanov, who's kind of come into the lineup, and he's immediately had a huge impact playing. I think he got some time with Shea Weber, but I think he's slotted in on the third pairing. But other than that, they have, Weber, Petrie, Edmondson, Kulak, Chirot already. So I feel like someone like Mete would be the expendable one of that bunch right now.
Yeah, and they just have to pray that nobody gets hurt in their top 6D. Unless they send back somebody like a 7th, 8th guy. I don't know. But, yeah. Has there been any other teams that have been rumoredly interested?
Montreal was
Dubois?
Yeah, Montreal was the only one that I had seen serious consideration for. I think a lot of teams are obviously going to call for him, but not many would be able to fit his contract in right now, or be able to part with what it would take to get him. Because like that, trading for Pierre-Luc Dubois might be one of those trades where it's hard to get a package that is worth it on either side. Because like one team's going to have to give up a lot of good pieces, prospects, draft picks to get Pierre-Luc Dubois, to get a single player. And the other team's giving up what could be a first-line center if he was utilized as one in Pierre-Luc Dubois for a bunch of pieces that may or may not pan out. So the ones that the package just doesn't work out very well for either side, but it's going to... where one team's going to have to give up a lot for a player like him.
Yeah, it kind of seems like that Matt Duchene. Yeah, it kind of seems like that Matt Duchene type trade where they might wait and wait and wait for the right type of deal. But if he wants out, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's going to be hard to get fair value for him because he didn't say publicly he wanted out. And so you can't put that on him if, they don't have a whole lot of bargaining power in this trade. Because the team in Tortorella let it be known that yes, he did officially request a trade. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like you said, there's probably not a whole lot of teams that could fit him in, unless they moved somebody. Maybe the Devils.
No, maybe.
Maybe the Devils get him.
You looking at their lineup, they could really use
their retool.
First line forward.
Yeah, just in general, just a first line forward. Yeah.
Don't care who, just somebody.
Yeah, we'll see where he ends up, if anywhere.
Yeah, because I mean, the Jackets are not in any rush to trade him. This isn't like an immediate thing. Like, he's going to play out the contract. He signed the contract for 2 years for a reason. He's going to stay there and get his ice time in and play as a Blue Jacket until something pops up, and it's going to be something that the organization deems worthwhile. So, like you said, Matt Duchene situation where it was known Duchene wanted out for a long time before Joe Sakic finally got a package that sufficed and in return, and pulled the trigger a very long time after rumors and speculation around the player started.
I got one more thing on my list here, and it's something that I kind of want your opinion on because you're an Oilers fan, and it's on the Oilers goaltending situation. So Mike Smith was put on long-term IR, and that left the Oilers with basically nobody readily available to be backup. Am I correct in saying that? Because somebody was in Europe, and somebody had just been
left with
and claimed.
Mikko Koskinen as their starter. Their third-string goalie, who is now the backup, Skinner, was there. Like, he was with the team and everything on the bench, but he's not ready for an NHL game. He's got very unimpressive numbers in the AHL, and they didn't have an available third-string goalie after Anton Forsberg got on waivers. So they had Olivier Rodrigue, who was loaned out to Austria and had to travel to the country, so he's obviously in quarantine and not with the team. And I believe it was Troy Grosnick was claimed off of waivers from, was it LA? Yeah, but either way,
I don't know.
Troy Grosnick was claimed off of waivers, and he's kind of in the process of joining the team, if he's even going to, because Aaron Dell just got claimed by the Devils, so someone else is going to have to, so the Devils are going to have to put someone on waivers, and then, someone, Toronto or Winnipeg's probably going to claim whoever the Devils put on waivers, and then Forsberg's going to go back on waivers, so it's like a whole thing. But to answer your original question, yes, the Oilers have no real backup goalie.
Yeah, so hopefully they don't push Koskinen to the edge here with that much usage. But yeah, that was a low-key, really smart move by the Devils to pick up Dell, I think. Take advantage of Toronto having to waive one of their guys. And, Dell, I know he's someone that you were positive on joining the Leafs, and, looks like Campbell secured that spot, I guess. And, he's too good of a goalie to make it through waivers, even with, everyone bouncing around right now. And so when Corey Crawford retired, they really needed somebody. And so, smart move for them.
It does, however, break the Devils goalie tandem of Blackwood and Wedgwood, which I find disappointing.
Yeah, the Forest.
The Forest, along with forward Miles Wood.
Yeah, just the Carpenter team.
Chop wood.
Yeah, they're really a lot of blue-collar guys, hey? They've got Miles Wood, they've got Will Butcher, they've got Blackwood, Wedgwood. Just a hard Nolan Foote, I guess, on the taxi squad, too. So, just hard-working, good Ontario boys, by the sounds of it, anyway. And then just a shit ton of, Jespers on forward. Jespers, Agor, and Jaegers. That's basically the Devils.
It's like the number 1 1 and 2 criteria for joining the Devils is, what is your first name, and do you have like a profession in your name?
Exactly.
So on that note, we're going to wrap things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to our show on any podcast platform, and spread around the good word of Clappercast. To keep up to date with the latest content, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Clappercast Media, or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next with more hockey talk.